Well, it's not a quote, but it's a report that Williams said the Bills told him they would take him if he was there at 30, and, he wasn't. So, feather in your cap. That was your mock
That was your
draft
guy.
player.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I wonder how many people, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, Sal. Maybe you have a guess or an opinion about it. Like, I wonder, because we had a little bit of this with Xavier Worthy after the playoff game, right? He said, the Bills told me they liked me and they were going to take me, and I'm not positive who that was attributed to, but I feel like he said that was Joe Brady that maybe told him that. I just wonder, like, the Bills, there's a lot of people that could be the Bills, right? They could be a scout that meets with him. They could be like any number of people that you would run into on a visit like that it's not like official, it's obviously not binding. It's a fluid thing, a draft, so who knows what's going to happen. I just wonder how many people leave meeting with the Bills thinking, like, hey, I think they're going to take me.
Yeah, I wonder too. And, I think you want to kind of cover all your bases, obviously. You want to make people feel good as well. And you never know. I think there's also some gamesmanship around the league, not just the Bills, where you say that to a guy, it starts to leak out, and that's how you get connected to a player, right?
Right.
Like, they told 5 guys this, all of a sudden there's these, mock drafts saying Malachi Starks going to the Bills. Maybe somebody said to Malachi Starks, hey, we really like you. If you get to 30, we might take you. And all of a sudden that's how those things wind up going out there. So, yeah, I wouldn't doubt that could happen. I also wouldn't doubt that the Bills might want to take him, guys. That's why I had him there, because I didn't think that, he really would fit.
Let's talk about tonight now. So, as I said earlier, naturally, given what this draft kind of shaped up to be like, there are several players still available that were talked about as first-round picks. Some of them are cornerbacks, and that's probably off the list now for the Bills. But edge rushers, defensive tackles, receivers, there are a few. They don't pick until 56, and then they have 62. So the 24th pick tonight is what the Bills are sitting on. What are maybe a couple of your educated guesses? Like, what do you think they might have in mind?
So both your guys are still there, Luther Burden and Nick Emenwari, right?
Yeah.
I mean, those are still on the board. I did a Twitter poll today. I asked fans if they think the Bills, out of these picks, would they stay with both where they are? Would they trade both? Would they stay with 56 and trade 62, or vice versa? Most fans said that they would stay at both these picks. I just think, given the track record of Brandon Beane, given the fact he has no third-round pick, I wouldn't doubt if he starts moving around the board a little bit. So we'll see how it goes. As far as players are concerned, I'm just going to be consistent and say what I've said since the offseason pretty much started, guys, which is I think they're going to concentrate on defense, and I think they're looking at defensive line early on with these picks. That said, this is different than the first round. If they get to pick 56 and Nick Emenwari's there and they feel like they can really use him, now it doesn't have to become a starter. Now you're talking about a Cole Bishop kind of player where he doesn't have to play right away year one. You fit him in after you play special teams. You see what he does. Second round's different, especially picking in the 50s than it is in the first round. I wouldn't be stunned by something like that. I would be much more surprised if they went wide receiver this early. I just don't see it happening. I don't think the Bills have an appetite for that in this draft right now. I think that's something that happens day 3. I still think safety happens day 3. But I wouldn't be stunned if it's a guy they really like. The kid from Notre Dame.
Xavier Watts. Yeah.
Xavier Watts, thank you. I mean, now's the time where you don't have to have the pressure to put him on the field. Fans might think that, again, going back to Bishop last year and fans thinking that. But I don't think that you have to have that if you're the Buffalo Bills now. You're kind of covered on your bases with your starting 22. Now it's about who can play for us this year, though. Who can have a role for us this year? I think they look defensive line. If Azaraku is there, I mean, that's a guy. Darius Alexander. That's a guy you could look at. TJ Sanders, Landon Jackson. There's some names out there on the front seven.
You never know how any one team is going to rank these players, but Azaraku, Mike Green, and even Nick Skirton, 3 edge rushers that were often or even commonly first-round mock draft players. I wonder if the Bills would, it doesn't have to be the Bills. If a team thought there was sort of an amazing value there in one of those guys, I'm sure there are teams that do. I think I'd like to be at the top of the second round right now as a team that didn't have this urgency, because I bet I could make a pretty good trade.
Right. I think, with Mike Green, he has some serious allegations against him. And I think that's a big reason why he has dropped down to where he is. It would take a team being very, very comfortable with that. And, of course, we're just a few years removed from Matt Ariza's situation, guys. Right? So, I mean, for the Bills, I think that's even extra comfortable on top of being very, very comfortable, like a lot of teams would have to be. That being said, sitting at the top of the second round here are the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns have a chance here to do something people thought they might do in the top 5, and that's take Shadur Sanders, right? So we'll see if that starts kicking things off because he has not been taken yet, and that could really alter how this draft starts to fall. But you're right, Mike. There's some value there, and I think if you're at the top of this draft and top of this round, you can kind of start really making some calls and seeing what teams feel about some of these guys that have some value.
The rankings that I have been looking at for months here from CBS Sports had Green as the 2nd-rated edge rusher and the 11th rated player in the draft. Yeah. I mean, so that is stark. I mean, that can't happen. It's not like unprecedented that there'd be a guy that. But wow, I mean, the teams must really feel nervous about him for that to have happened. I think.
Yeah, and listen, for a very, very different reason. This is Will Johnson, right? I mean, the Bills took Max Harrison with Will Johnson still on the board.
Right.
Lots of teams took lots of players with Will Johnson still on the board. I bet you those same rankings, Bulldog will have Will Johnson as maybe the top-ranked corner.
He was, yes.
Yep, and a top 15 prospect. Mm-hmm. We're talking about a guy that has a knee injury, a hamstring. I mean, his own coach, when Jim Harbaugh passed on him, his own coach that brought him to college at Michigan, when Jim Harbaugh passed on him, I think that was a real clear sign that, okay, and I know that they wanted the running back, Hampton, who they got, but that really kind of told you a story about Will Johnson. But this could be really good value. Again, now a team can say, we'll draft Will Johnson in the 2nd round. We'll give him a redshirt year or a redshirt half a year if we have to, because we're getting great value once he's healthy.
Yeah, top-ranked corner, 17th player overall, by the way.
Apart from Hunter, right?
Apart from Hunter, correct.
Sal, Adam Schefter last hour was talking about Shadur Sanders as if he doesn't get picked at 83 by Pittsburgh, he could go anywhere. He's talking like he doesn't think he'll go in the 2nd round now.
Wow. I mean, that's just wild, right? I mean, this isn't the NBA, but I was thinking about what about an NBA type thing where a team that has no use for a quarterback just drafts him to trade him, right? But this doesn't work like that in the NFL. You don't see teams doing that. So I could see it, but man, there's got to be a team that says, okay, the value has to match here at some point. Yeah, if you're the Steelers, look, they took Derek Harmon. I love Derek Harmon. You guys know that. He does have the shoulder injury. He just screams Pittsburgh Steeler, right? He's like kind of the ultimate Steelers type of player, and it totally is going to fit with him in Pittsburgh. But if you're the Steelers, don't you maybe have to think about, or do we think that they might know something about Aaron Rodgers to be sitting here, and if they don't take a quarterback soon, that they have to have that plan?
Yes. They also don't have a 2nd-round pick, so they can't use that as a backup plan. Well, Derek Harmon, enjoy your 31-13 wild card loss this year, buddy.
Right.
Right, with Mason Rudolph as your quarterback.
Enjoy
maybe.
that. It is the playoffs. You will beat the Browns twice. I like Milroe for the Browns, Sal.
Yeah. I was going to talk about quarterbacks, Mike. I mean, I wouldn't be stunned. I mean, Jackson Dart went ahead of Shadur Sanders,
yep.
Right? Who's the kid from Louisville? I always get his name wrong. Shug. Thank you for saying it the correct way for me. I was just listening to Matt Miller on ESPN saying he thinks he could be the next quarterback off the board. This is weird territory now for Shadur Sanders, right? He's such a polarizing type of player. And look, I know that I talked to people in the owners' meetings who confirmed and said to me, I talked to high-ranking NFL people in teams who said to me, you have to think about Dion coming with him. But it doesn't have to be a deal breaker. You just have to be comfortable with it, right? Now, you could have a team that is uncomfortable with that, but I think at this point, it's beyond that. I think it's just about the player at this point.
Yeah.
Ross Tucker chimed in on it, and he made the point that, if I can use the word, or he can use the word distraction, if the player is seen as a potential distraction, it's one thing if he's a starter and he's great, and you put up with maybe certain attitude. Can I use Cam Newton maybe? Would that be fair? Like somebody this guy's an MVP player. He's got eccentricities, but okay.
Right.
But if it's a backup, I mean, Ross's point is you especially don't want to have to deal with that for a backup. And, it's not even necessarily much the player's fault. It's just he's such a big name. And if Deion Sanders is, kind of in the news all the time about it, then your coach is being asked about it all the time. The starter has a bad game. Maybe the starter's not perfect, which is why you drafted him. And just like, it can be a lot. It can be a lot.
How about this, Mike? If he goes I think it has to almost be a team, too, where the coach is on firm footing. Because if he goes to Cleveland and they start stinking up, people are going to want Deion of the Cleveland Browns.
Right, be the head coach.
If he goes to New Orleans, they're not firing Kellen Moore probably after a year. That's a little different. I don't think it's happening with Tomlin, although the fans might want it. Like, I don't think that's happening. That's why I also thought about Joe Shane for this and Brian Daboll, which is, if they take him, and they did take Dart, and I think they like Dart more, but I think that's an element for them, which is if they take Shadur Sanders and they start having a bad year, all of a sudden the New York media, Deion Sanders is sitting there, they're going, let's get rid of Brian Daboll and hire Deion Sanders.
It's almost like you bring in a former coach. Not that Deion's ever coached in the NFL, so it's not a perfect analogy here. But you're bringing in some, a GM to be a consultant, and the GM is already on the hot seat. Like, oh, okay, here it comes. You got a guy in waiting, and that's how it would feel. I think maybe with a coaching staff or a GM, like you're saying, the Giants, who might be at kind of the end of the line if they don't get it together quickly, and you'd almost have a guy in the wings sort of waiting to take over. That's how it would be perceived anyway. I don't know how accurate it would have to be.
Well, the Rams are a good idea because their coach is stable and he doesn't have to play. Maybe they can handle it. I kind of like that idea. Sammy P said the same thing earlier. I'm looking at a mock draft that also has Sanders to the Rams at 46. We will see.
I read before I left to come down to the stadium, I didn't hear this, but I read that Schefter mentioned the Cardinals as a surprise team that could like Shadur Sanders.
Yes. He said if it's not Pittsburgh in the third round, it could be anybody. Miami, could be anybody. All right, Sal, go get your seat. Go get your seat.
I'm going to grab my seat now, and then we're going to have Max Harrison coming up at about 5 p.m., guys, and then round 2 starts at 7 p.m.
All right, well,